Oh my God. She just sat right on the cable. Hey.
All right. Once you set baby's situation out, you want to start the show?
I thought this was the show.
It's a show. It's not the show.
It's the dog show now.
Yeah.
Woo! Look at that dog.
Wow.
She's still shedding her rat hair. She's
Heck
still
of a
got a whole
dog.
bunch of that baby hair. She's incredible. She's maybe the smartest, the smartest dog who's specifically bred to be an idiot that I've ever met. So, I mean, she's specifically bred to be really stupid, but she's like way smarter than you'd expect a Pomeranian to be.
Didn't take.
It's body time in America. This is episode 307 US of Insert Credit, a localized podcast with an NTSC-compliant horrible buzzer. I'm Alex Jaffe, and I typically aim to get to the airport 90 minutes before boarding.
I'm Frank Cifaldi, and I typically aim to get to the airport 60 minutes before boarding.
I'm Tim Rogers, and I typically plan to the airport a number of minutes dependent upon both the airport and the nature of the flight. So if it's LaGuardia, I'll try to get there 90 minutes early because I generally know how long it takes to get to LaGuardia. If it's Newark, I'll aim to get there. You ready for this?
Yeah.
6 hours early.
Wow.
Because I've had multiple situations at Newark. If it's JFK, 3 hours early. If it's Indianapolis International Airport, 45 minutes. 45 minutes before boarding. If it's Oakland Airport, 1 hour and 90 minutes before boarding. But also, I will say that I packed my suitcase. I'm Tim Rogers, and I packed my suitcase for travel 48 hours before flight. So
that's true.
I make sure it's completely packed. So
I usually do it the morning of.
I'm Christa Lee, and I just kind of play it by ear. So usually like 2.5, 3 hours. I had to drive from Birmingham, Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia to take a flight to Texas, which might sound counterintuitive. And I got caught in a traffic jam and had to drive back, not having slept in 36 hours, and was had to turn on really loud music or I would have passed out. So now I just kind of just let the anxiety of having to do that again sort of carry me to the airport.
What's your stay awake in the car tunage? What do you got?
It was like noise rock. It was like Mersbo, Swans, stuff like that.
Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. I had to stay awake during a long drive a couple of weeks ago. So
it's the worst.
Yeah, I listened to some tune as well. Some hot tune.
All right. So here's what's going on with this episode. Last week, Brandon Sheffield, still away in Japan as of this recording, asked me to write up some questions for a crossover with the 8-4 Play podcast. I haven't heard the results yet, but I thought I would ask our own home panel the same questions to hear how your answers stack up.
Did you write them?
I did write them.
So they answered the same questions that you wrote?
Exactly.
So did you? Wow. Okay.
Today we'll be remotely competing with Brandon and the 8-4 Play panel to determine who can put on the better podcast based on the same array of topics. Here we go. How has Japanese corporate culture manifested itself in the history of game development?
I can tell you that a lot of good ideas that we've had in my game development career were shot down because Japan. So, that's the first thing that comes to mind for me.
I mean, that's too big of a question to deal with in something in like 6 minutes. I've got some experience working in Japanese video game companies, both on the publishing side and on the developing side and in the sales and the marketing. And there are some complicated office politics, linguistic honorifics, business translation mishaps, an hyper overabundance of company dinners, just all these things that generally, it seems like at times in my experience, it felt like the video game industry was attempting to align itself perfectly with the industrial manufacture of semiconductors or whatever. Like they were trying to treat everything like the exact same sort of business. And sure, you need the business heads in a business, right? But I mean, I wouldn't really say so much about, I worked at Grasshopper Manufacturer during the development of the No More Heroes games, right? So, there's a new No More Heroes game now. Have you heard about this? So I didn't work on that one. But everything seemed all right there in terms of it felt like an environment where people were making stuff.
If we want to look at it from an historical lens,
yes.
I think that Nintendo very much set the tone for what the video game industry would become with its third-party publishing directives during the NES days in the US, which were fairly draconian, were very strict, were very paperwork dependent, right?
Yeah.
There were a lot of bureaucratic rules and processes, some of which probably never made sense. A lot of them did make sense. You know, there was very strict, things that continue to this day. Like there's a concept called lot check where there's a very stringent testing of games that come in on each hardware revision of the platform. And there are very specific forms, attributed to those things. And I've never worked in Japan, but like all of this feels Japanese to me. At least in tone. And I believe that, those processes informed Sega of America. I believe they informed the way that Sony approached its third-party publishing. And, by the time Microsoft came around, we were at nearly 15 years of this kind of approach to third-party game publishing. So I attribute that to Japan.
You mentioned Sega. I think a lot of what made Sega, when they were a platform holder, so unique and interesting was that they maintained sort of a hardware development side of things and a software side of things, and there was so much crossover and so much interplay between those things. You've Yu Suzuki designing the Dreamcast after spending like 5 years trying to get Shenmue running on the Saturn. You have all the Sega model hardwares, the Model 1 using Model 2 using texture mapping materials developed by the United States military contractors. All these things where you have this sort of very horizontal relationship between the different sides of the companies, but with like a really strong, really, like you said, draconian sort of vertical arrangement of authority. Yeah, I think Nintendo sort of starts that for sure.
And how has specifically the way business is conducted in Japan? Tim mentioned like the sort of honorific structure and the codes of just like how people conduct themselves in everyday life there. How did that inform how Nintendo started out that way? Like, did they borrow that model from a different business?
Well, I just want to say that I've worked in offices in Japan and I've worked in offices in America, and there's people in both offices that just sit around doing nothing but checking their email and twirling their pens all day. That's just most of the time. You're like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to just kind of sit here and look at whatever your version of Reddit is at that point in history, right? It's so there's that. I just want to point that out real quick. I don't really think I think there's far, 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 far more similarities than differences between office and corporate culture in America and Japan. We have would dip your toe into a little bit of Orientalism when you start getting like Michael Crichton's Rising Sun starring Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery, Business is War, or whatever, right? So it's like, that's all I wanted to say about that. I have something very specific I would like to say in response to this, but I'm planning like a whole huge like hour-long thing about it in the future. So it's difficult to not. I don't want to speak the thoughts while they're only 10%.
They're percolating,
formed. Yeah, but
that's fair.
There's a
stay
lot.
tuned for more. Here's my next topic. What are Japanese arcades like right now?
My most recent experience in a Japanese arcade was 4 years ago, and they're pretty good. They're still pretty good. You go to Hirose Entertainment Yard. Some people call it Hey.
I want to go so bad.
You go there, and it's just like it's just a good arcade. And what I noticed in 2019 that was a little different from how I left the scene in 2010. I went multiple times over the 2010s, and I was supposed to go in 2020, if you know what I mean. I was supposed to go right now, but that didn't happen either. But it will happen soon. Don't make fun of me. What had changed a little bit since between 2010 and 2019, markedly, I had noticed an increase in well-dressed people. Same arcades, more well-dressed people. The guys were dressed better. the guys in the Japanese, I'm speaking specifically of Hey. I'm familiar with most of the arcades. I used to hang out in Nishispo a lot. I used to hang out in Hey a lot. I don't think Try exists anymore.
I don't think it does.
It doesn't. Try was a heck of an arcade, another Taito one. I liked a couple of the Sega arcades, especially the one in Kabukicho where you could play the 2-player Outrun 2 single cabinet ultra deluxe version. I liked all of the arcades. I was a big arcade boy. Would always drop 100 yen on something tasty there. But in 2019, Hey had stayed basically the same. They'd added a couple more of these experience games, which were basically big time arcade game makers delving into esports, MOBAs, FPSs. Gunslinger Stratos was a hot game at the time I went. Very, very interesting game by Square Enix that combines character progression, champions, sort of a RTS MOBA sort of setup. And it's a very large game, a flashy game, a bombastic game, and an interesting game. And, anyway, they've added a couple things like that. Taito was thriving with their fancier cabinets in 2019. This is 2019, by the way. Mm-hmm. I keep saying that. I'm sure it's a little messed up now. I'm sure I know many of them had to close, and I know that it's dark harbingers for a couple of them. But one thing I noticed in 2019 that struck me like a goddarn lightning bolt was, these guys are wearing nicer clothes. Oh. Whereas previously the guys in the arcades looked like they shopped at Jeans Mate. If you've ever been to Japan, you may know what Jeans Mate is. Jeans Mate is a 24-hour clothing store. If at 3 a.m. you need to buy a really bad flannel shirt that has a t-shirt sewn into it so that you can't button it up, you just put it on like a Halloween costume, and it just looks like a casual shirt that somebody's worn 100 times, but you pay brand new $30 prices for it.
I have seen these things for sale at like Comic Cons all the time, and I always wonder, who are these for?
Guys were always wearing the self-loathing glasses, like the really, really narrow glasses that are like the height of an iris. Where it's like, I want to wear the most minimal glasses possible so I don't look like a guy who's wearing glasses. But then you end up looking like just a person who hates themselves. Right? And it's like, that's a little, Anyway, that was the typical arcade guy in Japan. But I saw bigger glasses, nicer clothes. Was it the rise of K-pop? I don't know what it was, but something inspired the Japanese arcade dwellers to dress better. Or maybe they, like me, had gotten older and had spent a little bit more money on clothing.
The opposite of what happened in airplanes and baseball stadiums.
That's me describing how I dressed when I went to Hey in 2010. So, like it's a little bit more, it's like that. So that's all I have to say. I'm sure they're worse now. I'm sure a bunch of them closed. I'm sure they suck. There's COVID protocols, hand sanitizing stations. I'm sure you get yelled at for touching too much stuff a little bit more than you did. When you went to an arcade in 2003, if you took your phone out of your pocket as a foreign man, you immediately got two guys who, one of them who looked like he was on his high school baseball team, and the other of whom looked like he called a guy who was on the high school baseball team Aniki, just grabbing your wrist, grabbing your wrist and yelling, "No photo," right? Whereas in 2019 or so, you would get, people being like, "Oh, please don't take too many photos, okay? Don't take photos of people. Don't take photos of the screens either. But you can take photos of the general ambience and some selfies if you'd like. Thank you." Right? And in 2023, I think they probably are back to no photo.
Interesting.
Because there's germs on phones, right? So I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. Is basically what I just spent a whole bunch of time saying.
So if you're visiting Hey now, what would you recommend wearing?
A shirt that says All-Star on it? Is that what you're trying to get me to say?
My wife and I are currently aggressively learning Japanese to hopefully visit next year before all of the arcades are gone.
Yeah.
I have only ever visited Japanese arcades in Yakuza.
Oh, and how is that?
Well, all the games are made by Sega.
Yeah.
Pretty good, right?
And sometimes there's like drama with children that you resolve within the arcades by playing the arcade.
I know I've said this before. In other terms, in other places, in other ways. But Frank, you really got to check out Japan sometime. I think you'd have a real good time. I'm sure you already. I know you already know that, but you'd have a good time there.
I'd like you all to design an online multiplayer game where the mechanics are intended to incorporate international time zone differences.
Oh, are we talking Phantasy Star Online?
Final Fantasy 11 here?
Swatch Beat?
Yeah, Swatch Beat.
Okay, the mechanics?
Yeah.
Like, so...
It takes into account the fact that people are going to play this game at different times, but in a way that makes sure they're all playing the same game together.
Well, so what you'd want to do is you would definitely want to have some sort of core mechanic that requires you to have party members in multiple time zones. So in other words, like a base that you're building with multiple people, and there's certain phases that can only be done during certain times of day. You can only water your crops during the day. You can only build your fortifications at night, like whatever. And it's like, you accommodate for all people to be playing the game. The design needs to revolve around a central pillar that requires it to be a specific time of day, all day, for at least one person on your team, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and the game's called 5 o'clock somewhere.
There you go.
Oh, no.
Nice.
You'd want some kind of a baton pass between it's, 6 a.m. where I am, but it's 3 p.m. where you are. So I have something that sort of aids in your, what you're doing.
Yeah, I like that.
It might be about running some kind of 24-hour business. Selling you a bad pair of jeans.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, but it's like, I actually like the idea that like everyone plays the game at the same time, not literally around the world, but it's like, okay, it's, Pacific time zone.
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. It's 5 o'clock here. It might be because I've been really enamored by the idea of the Super Famicom, the Satellaview experience, right? Where it's like there is a time where you have to be there in order to play the content. I actually still think there's something to that. So I might be hijacking this toward my Satellaview fantasies, in which case we should move on to a different idea, like, I don't know, ghosts. Like maybe it's a racing game and you race against the ghosts. That's easy.
Anybody can do
1
that.
versus 100.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just name dropping 1 versus 100.
The trivia game show sort of thing.
Yeah,
right?
for the Xbox 360. It was pretty fun. And it had like specific times. There was that oh god, what was it called? There was that mobile quiz show game that everybody got really invested in for 2 weeks. HQ, that's the one. Yeah, high quality.
With my nemesis Scott Rogowski on it.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to that guy?
Every time I kind of seethed at that screen like I could be doing this job.
Didn't they like try to kind of like fire that guy, or like he wanted more money and they were like, we're only going to give you $3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was like blasted them or whatever. And then
that sounds right.
That's about how
everybody was obsessed with that for like those 6 weeks, weren't they?
Yeah. It was we were
really
beginning
weird.
of COVID, right?
Yeah.
No, this was before COVID.
That was pre-COVID.
Was it before COVID?
Okay.
It all kind of blurs together.
That was pre-COVID. I mean, I distinctly remember being in a particular office during the time that thing was popular.
All right, what else?
Yeah, it was
maybe with this idea of ghosts, maybe there's some sort of like tag team mechanic where you have to take into account when your teammate in the future has done something, right? Like maybe everything's on a parallel timeline, right? Maybe it is 5 o'clock everywhere, right? And it's like whatever everyone's doing at 5 o'clock is happening at 5 o'clock locally to you, right? So you're seeing ghosts from the future.
that's cool.
Doing the thing. Maybe there's something there.
All I can really think of are like base building mechanics, and then it's like when you I'm just thinking Death Stranding now, right? Like it's like when you put up like a watchtower or whatever, it's like it takes 8 people to build this, right? And 8 people need to execute the build command on this thing. And it's like, but you have to do it at 3 p.m. It's like, I put this down at 3 p.m. And then that you have like a 15-minute window to execute to put your resources into it or whatever. And then someone in a different time zone on your team can, if it's 3 p.m. for them, they can continue feeding it or whatever. And you end up, I don't know. It's a little arcane.
Hands across the world.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
It could also be like, I'm going back to the ghost thing. It could be like that section of Braid where the mechanic is you do something and then rewind, and then your shadow self goes and does that same thing. It's like a replay, and you can like I don't think you could bounce off of your shadow, but in this game, I think you should be able to. I like the idea of like, things are playing out as they did somewhere else at this time, but you can just add to it.
I see
right?
where you're going.
Yeah.
Creating a ghost that future players can interact with.
Yes, Christa.
There was this reminds me, there was a squad-based shooter like a year ago, 2 years ago called Lemniscate. That is basically this premise. It's like a multiplayer shooter, but everybody sort of does an action. Like, I go over here and jump and shoot somebody, and then the game rewinds, and then that action plays over again. And it's like a turn-based tactical shooter that it's not tied to any kind of universal time. Your ghost idea reminded me of that.
Right.
It's cool. I wouldn't play it, but it's neat.
That's time. Here's a dilemma I've experienced in the past, and I want to know if this has happened to you. Has it ever happened to you that you've played a video game sequel or a follow-up that's technically better than the previous one in every way, but you don't like it as much? And why does that happen?
Oh.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot 2.
I'm sure somebody could argue for Final Fantasy 14 versus Final Fantasy 11.
Thanks, Tim.
Somebody could, right? Somebody could probably argue for that, right?
Yeah.
Right? I don't know. Is that possible?
Yeah.
Because Final Fantasy 14 is quote unquote better than Final Fantasy 11, in that it's got more stuff, more graphics, more story, more music, more expansions, more worlds, more weapons, more characters, more classes, more mechanics, more players. It's on more consoles, right? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, right. But then Final Fantasy 11 has the vibes.
Yeah. It's basically like larger scale Morrowind, right? And Elder Scrolls is another one, right? I think people would say that Oblivion and Skyrim are a bit more.
Arena's the best.
Am I the only person who really wishes they would have just called Oblivion Tomorrowind? Thank you.
Nice. Very good.
I was trying to make the worst joke possible.
I think my answer is similar to what Christa started saying with Crash Bandicoot, which is I think of games where the sequels are kind of fundamentally just riffs on the original. So I think of like the Donkey Kong Country series. I mean, 2 and 3 are probably better than 1, but I've bounced off of them every time I've tried to play because it's like, well, I've already played Donkey Kong Country.
There's this interesting thing where it's like, I'm pretty sure 2 is like way better than 1, but I don't really care.
Right.
And also, I have heard from people, but 3 is actually the best one. I've heard from people where my experience is that 3 completely fails to capture any of what 2 did. Well, 2 is just it is a riff 100%, but it is just, who cares at that point?
Yeah.
I mean, 3, you don't have Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong. It's so detached from the initial premise.
Yeah, it's very, very odd.
You've got that ugly little baby monkey guy.
Yeah.
Kitty Kong.
Kitty Kong. That name's not going to age well.
No.
I think of the Mega Man games as well.
Yeah.
Even the later like 16-bit stuff or whatever. It's like I honestly don't care too much for any of the games at this point. I've played enough Mega Man in my career. But
good, you put that on the back of the Mega Man Legacy Collection.
but anything past 2, maybe 3, like probably technically better, more features, more stuff to do, but I don't care.
Yeah.
Not a fan of charging, are you?
As someone who has stepped out into the main street of the internet, into the main intersection between high and main on the internet, and just said, I don't think Mega Man's very good.
Thank you.
I can, and I get yelled at about it like once a day. Okay. Like I still accumulate comments on a particular video. And it's a fun little thing to know. You need to read the comments as a YouTuber because that's how you know what videos to make in the future. If you really need to push a button, I know which button it is, and it's the Mega Buster button. Anyway, as a person who has gone out in public and said Mega Man is not actually that great, I can say with absolute confidence, Frank, that Mega Man 4 is way better than Mega Man 3.
Which is crazy because every time I try to play that, it's just like this feels like a cover band. Every time I play that.
Yeah, and then Mega Man 6 is legit. 4, 5, and 6 are really like well done games. 7 is really good, but nobody really likes 7, right? That's the
16-bit one.
Yeah, 16-bit one.
It's pretty great though.
Yeah, 8 is pretty good, but it's like everyone's like, oh, Mega Man 2, dude. And I really think Mega Man would be the most famous video game series in the world if people could agree on whether it was Mega Man 2 or Mega Man 3 that was quote unquote the good one. That's how they get you. There's a lot to be said on what a good video game sequel is. And the answer very clearly, very, very succinctly to put the answer, it is Super Mario Brothers 3. That is a good video game sequel. It just so happens to be a good video game sequel to Super Mario Brothers 1, not to Super Mario Brothers 2 or Super Mario Brothers 2, The Lost Levels.
And then World is the Mega Man 3 to the Mario 3 Mega Man 2, I feel.
Exactly. So that's why neither of those games is as sold as well as Grand Theft Auto 5, right?
I was actually going to say I recognize Super Mario Brothers 3 is it's hard not to recognize it, but I do prefer 1 and 2. If I'm honest, the simplicity of especially 2. I think 2 is like a really ambitious. That's the
you can always just
Famicom Disk
up
System too.
Have a good time. Always just fire that up, and it still feels extremely foreign to me, which is exciting.
The illusion of space and depth in 2 is remarkable to me.
Yeah.
Just the recycling of tiles and just repaleting of them to feel like you're somewhere else.
That's weird as
the
heck,
magic trick of going through a door and feeling like, oh, I'm in a different place now, and this is a world that exists with buildings. Like I don't know why it works so well in that game.
Well, I do love Yume Kojo Doki Doki Panic, but I meant the Lost Levels.
Oh, okay.
I just really I like that game.
I just spent this whole time trying to think what's a video game series that has a sequel that's fundamentally much huger, bigger, better, wilder, weirder, wackier, packeder, full of stuff that is so different but also is good that makes me not able to decide which one is better, right? Right. It makes me think, wow, I don't know which one of these two games is my favorite. And that I would propose Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2. Like I don't know which one of those is better. Red Dead Redemption 1's wild, man. That game rules. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 is just bonkers. It owns, right? It's like I don't know which one of those is better. So there you have it. Thank you.
One of them is pure and one of them is the most, maybe.
Thank you.
All right. It's something to consider. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back with more of the Insert Credit Show. The game I was talking about, which Brandon may have mentioned in our sister episode that you heard last week, was NieR Automata. NieR Automata is unarguably better than NieR, the original, in basically every way, but I don't know, didn't do the same thing for me. Maybe because of all the... I'm talking to our audience, Frank. There are thousands of people who listen to this show, and
none of them right now
bearing a little bit of my personal soul to me. They're like, hey, Alex, what do you think about video games? And I tell them I don't really have any opinions about video games, but in this instance, I do have one, and I was going to share it, but now the moment is ruined, and I hope you're happy with yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, let's just sit in awkward silence then.
Yeah, let's do that. I love awkward silence. Actually, I'm going to get a drink.
Okay. Oh, like an entire bottle of scotch? That's not what I thought would happen when he said that.
Welcome back to Insert Credit. Here's my next question. What's your approach to game localization purity? When can you tell that a game's localization team has taken a few too many liberties or have suffered to adhere too closely to the original text?
I've got a good one here before Tim gets started.
Go ahead and everybody just go ahead and talk about this as long as you can to leave me as little time as possible.
The currently available release of Ys 1 and 2 that you can get on Steam, and it's, I think, originally a PSP game. Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles Plus, I think, is the full title. At the beginning of the game, there's an additional scene where somebody just kind of arbitrarily quotes Man-Eater by Hall & Oates as a joke. And
she only comes out at night.
Look out, here she comes.
Yeah, that's the line. And I fully recommend that game, but that one line is like nails on a chalkboard. It
just
makes
gets
me
you
so mad. Yeah.
For me, I can just tell when I should say I know no Japanese, but I can tell almost immediately when a script is trying to be too direct. And it's just, there's little telltale signs. Like they use words we don't use very often, like calamity. You know, like we are all English speakers. Have any of us ever said the word calamity other than referring to Calamity Jane?
Or when a lot of characters go, that's my line.
That's my line. それはこっちのセリフだ。こっちのセリフ。こっちのセリフ.
And it's like whatever that kind of writing is, that's nails on a chalkboard to me, where it's just like, you know, at the expense of a script that sounds good, I'm going to attempt what I believe to be as authentic, which is very stilted and hard to read or relate to. That is the Japanese way of speaking to each other, right?
Japanese is an interesting language, I say, as a person who's learned a couple of languages. And if only I had something really, 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 really big to say about this, and if only there were a video game that offers a whole lot of really incredible examples of different complete translations for me to go through line by line to dissect. That's not Final Fantasy VII. In order for me to answer this question, I need to make sure everyone here has read at least 2 English translations and the Russian original of War and Peace. Is that true for everyone here? Just
I read one.
Sorry, I've read the Russian and 1 English translation.
You might as well go for 2 Englishes. So there's there's a lot of conversation in the literary translation community about how to translate War and Peace specifically, but how to translate just books in general. There's the translator Constance Garnett. Does anybody know the name Constance Garnett? She translated an enormous number of books into English in the old the Victorian times. And a lot of those translations she made. Have you ever seen like a French person on social media laughing at how every time there's an American movie set in France, everyone speaks with a British accent? That's Constance Garnett's fault, like almost 100%. She made every Russian protagonist in War and Peace sound like a British gentleman, right? Like she just Britished the heck out of stuff. And there's a quaintness to it. And you will see scholarly people, academic people, interesting people say, I actually prefer the Garnett of this one because it feels old. It feels like the appropriate age. It feels like a product of its time. And it's like, that's wrong, dude. You know, there's tailors in the world who can make you a Victorian suit authentic right now. You can get Harris tweed made in Scotland exactly the same way it was made long ago. And also, I'm more of the school, and this is a trite opinion to have as an enjoyer of translated literature and an attempted translator myself in some cases, but I'm a fan of the Pivir and Volokonsky translations of all of your Russian literature. Check those ones out. They're a husband and wife translation duo who have translated a lot of things. And what they do is they retain the texture of the Russian language, but also make the work delicious and enjoyable, right? So you can lean on, I am a fan, and it's like, it's taken me until almost age 45 to realize this. I like to feel the texture of the original language in the translation. I say this as a person who has strived way too hard to just learn the original language in way too many situations. But it's like when I can't or don't have the time, and that's most of the time, I will freely confess, I like to feel the texture of the original language. And that's what Frank refers to. That's the texture of Japanese. You're feeling the texture of Japanese, the weird sentence structures. I did a series of videos when I was working at some food website, some taco website. Mm-hmm. I did a series of videos about why the translation to Final Fantasy VII is exactly the way it is. And I picked apart a lot of lines. Begrudgingly, I did dissect some of the famous typos because I was told that was a requirement if I was going to keep doing that series. So I did dissect these guys. These guys are sick, right? Like I did dissect that one. That was very easy to do. But there's I like to feel the texture of the language. But yeah, it gets really clumsy, right? It gets really clumsy to to be scraped with the texture of the language a lot. So I think a balance is required. And I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake's English script is, I played that game in both English and in Japanese. And I think the Final Fantasy VII Remake does a phenomenal job of keeping just the texture and the structure of a Japanese piece of prose, but also spicing it up a bit.
I remember when I was playing that, my wife and I played that together, FF7R, and I usually play with subs and with Japanese vocal because that's how the game was made. But we did 7R in full English, and that localization felt so effortless and like just natural. It felt exactly paired to the thing, and with a lot of I'm thinking Persona 5, a lot of no offense to the Persona 5 localizers, but I know there was a lot of directives from on high on that one specifically.
Yeah.
But with some of these things, there is a sort of stilted, kind of caught between sort of trying to represent the original language and also make something that flows and not really accomplishing either thing. And yeah, I found 7R probably the most notable translation I'd seen in a long time. I
it's like
really
Final
amazing.
Fantasy VII-R is an example of here we are in an era where localization and translation of video games has just kindly it's reached the goal. They've reached the goal line of it with that. And it's like there is a really sandpapery texture to the localizations of Super Nintendo RPGs, which I think are the ones Frank is mostly referring to, but also PS1 RPGs. It starts to get a little more refined. By the PS2, you're kind of in a dark ages. And then by the time Persona 4 and the Yakuza series, Scott Strikart, the director, the script director there, by the time you get to those, you're like, oh, that is some very well subtitled Japanese coming, the key is that it was rewritten by a man who does not speak any Japanese. Scott Strikart famously does not speak any Japanese, but he was the localization director for the Yakuza games. And all those Yakuza games that were put out under his watch, phenomenal writing in the subtitles. It's just phenomenally well localized. He localized it, punched it up, Englished it up, Americaned it up a little bit, but meanwhile maintained the texture and flow of Japanese. Also accomplished the Japanese subtitle mission, which is short subtitles that are easy and fast to read. That's how they subtitle stuff in Japanese. So it's like you just let the voice acting wash over you, or the performance wash over you while you quickly read the subtitles. I think those are phenomenal examples. And I also think the Funimation subtitles of Dragon Ball are very good as well at being the texture, accomplishing there's just enough of that PS1 JRPG translation feel that's also grammatically correct in a way I like. Anyway, I have too much to say about that.
All right, let's move on before you say too much.
Thank you.
That's original Dragon Ball?
Yeah, the original Dragon Ball.
Gotcha.
I really enjoyed the script on the original Dragon Ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on before the show gets too interesting. I have a riddle for you. Which game studio has produced the greatest number of good games without releasing any bad ones?
Capcom in the last few years until Exoprimal.
You mean any bad ones? Exoprimal's bad?
Yeah, that's the line. But everything Capcom was doing before Exoprimal was like just straight bangers.
I think everything Square Enix has ever made is good.
Yeah, Dio Field Chronicle.
Man, wait, can we just pause to reflect for a moment that today, the day of this recording, Thursday, September 28th, 2023, sees the launch of a new Dragon Quest game that has been advertised thousands of times to me on Instagram, yet no one on Earth has any idea what it is.
Wait, Dino Daiboken's out today?
Yeah. But what is it? What is this game? They have some of the most indecipherable Instagram posts for this thing. I don't understand. Like they're putting up screenshots that are just like abstract art. Like they won't even say what kind of game it is, and that's disconcerting.
It's like an action.
So in other words, the answer to this question is clearly not Square Enix. Not even even if we just boil it down to developers, like not even the Dragon Quest team, unfortunately.
Square Enix on the PlayStation, I guess that's kind of a cliche answer, but Square Enix on the PlayStation was pretty reliably great.
So we're looking for historical periods? Because
Because I mean, I think the spirit of the question is all time.
Yeah.
Like
all time.
Yeah.
They've never released a bad game.
Well, that'd just be like Hudson.
I'm sure Hudson's put out.
Hudson's put out a couple bad ones.
There might be a cheat, like, I don't know. Like, I don't think you could call any Rockstar North game bad.
Yeah.
So that's my first cheat answer.
from software. It's pretty cheaty.
Yeah.
Did they make table tennis? Table tennis was actually there.
Table tennis is so good.
Yeah, table tennis was good, right? So
I love that game.
Look at that I just posted something in the general chat. Look at the most recent one I just posted. Activate your coup de grace ultimate attacks that can be used by filling up a dedicated gauge. Time to turn the tide in battle. Like, what is that? It's just a still image.
I was excited about that game because it's a game studio.
It's not even a video.
Rockstar North did Manhunt, though.
I know.
Is Manhunt bad?
I'm pretty sure the consensus is
it's
Manhunt
bad. Yeah,
okay.
Not a very good one, no. That was very much a we're going to get so much media attention from Jack Thompson.
Yeah.
That was what that game was all about. It's a game where you're a serial killer.
They made that or published that?
I don't think it was internal.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
Remedy.
No, I'm
was
pretty
Remedy.
sure
Yeah,
it was.
there you go.
I'm pretty sure it was.
No. Sorry, Remedy didn't do. I was sorry.
I'm pretty sure it was
thoughts.
made by Rockstar. Was it not?
Yeah, developer Rockstar North.
I guess it was internal.
Yeah.
No, I was saying Remedy is the answer to the question. Sorry.
Okay.
Just hit
Remedy.
me.
Yeah. Having recently smoked a huge bowl of Quantum Break, which is, I believe, the one Remedy game most people who have played most Remedy games have not played. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If there's a Remedy game you haven't played, it's probably that one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Having most recently smoked that one, I can confirm it's a good game, dude. They're all good.
Yeah, Max Payne.
Yeah.
Alan
I just
Wake.
wrapped Alan Wake last night. We're playing all of them until up to Alan Wake 2.
Alan Wake is such a smoke, dude. Have we all played Alan Wake here? Frank, have you played Alan Wake?
I have not played Alan
Oh
Wake.
man, it's so good.
It's the game where the protagonist is most similar to you, Frank West from Dead Rising, because he's a writer who's just he's about as well fleshed out an author of fiction as Frank West is a journalist. I feel like Frank West. I've covered wars before West. Alan Wake and Max Payne and Grand Theft Auto 3 guy are like the world's like wildest quadruplets. I feel like that would be cool if there was.
They're
some
like
sort of-
Tarantino's Vega Boys.
It might be because someone said I look like him, but you might want to throw in the Far Cry 1 guy.
Yeah, sure. Why not? Far Cry 1 guy.
I don't know if that's the same guy that's in other Far Cries. I have no idea.
Oh, no, it's not.
no way.
They pride themselves on a completely different, horrible scenario for every one of their games.
All right.
Yeah, every protagonist is a far cry from the previous one.
That's how they get the name.
Yeah.
Of course, the true Far Cry protagonist is Till Schweiger, who starred in Uwe Boll's Far Cry the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what the definition of insanity is? I'm just checking in.
Oh, man, yeah. Ubisoft knows how to make a trailer. So is it Ubisoft?
It's Ubisoft.
There might be an Ubisoft studio that's flawless.
Okay, so Remedy, there might be an Ubisoft studio. Okay, so the team that made Assassin's Creed, I'm going to go ahead and say this out loud. I want everybody to bear witness to what I'm about to say. There's not a bad Assassin's Creed game. They're all good. All those are good video games. I say this as a guy who talks about Super Mario Brothers 3 and Earthbound all the time. Assassin's Creed games are all very good.
They're all at least okay.
Yeah, no, they're all very good.
Oh.
They're all at least an 8 out of 10 on like the IGN scale from me. As I have internalized the IGN scale, they're all at least an 8 out of 10.
Oh.
Some of them go up above 9, but not above 9.5. I don't even think any of them gets up to 9.4.
Tim, I need you to be straight with me. Is this Star Wars Outlaws game going to be good?
There is a decent chance, yeah. There's a decent chance.
I want it to be good so bad.
There's a decent chance that Avatar game is pretty good too.
Yeah.
It's very pretty.
Ask me again in a couple of weeks, because that's
Okay.
when the new Assassin's Creed comes out.
And you'll be able to tell from there.
Yeah, and the new Assassin's Creed is an Assassin's Creed game.
It's a real one, yeah.
It's not one of those big, giant, massive, huge open world games that I think hundreds of people must have died during the development of those games, because I don't understand how you put such a massive open world game out like that in 2 years or 3 years or whatever the development cycle
It's like
was.
people being buried under the concrete of a dam construction.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure how they put those games. That Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you've never played an Assassin's Creed game, just take a look at a list of them. And which one has the theme you like? Do you like Victorian England? Do you like Egypt? Ancient Greece, pirates, American Revolution. What about Renaissance Italy, right? Vikings, pirates, ancient Greece, Egypt. Which flavor would your 9-year-old self like? And if you have a PC, just get it. Check it out. You know what? I'll say it. The French Revolution one, Assassin's Creed Unity, might be my favorite one.
It's a really cool game.
It might be my favorite one. If you're playing it on an RTX 4090, for God's sake, 4K, 120 FPS, effortless. It's just wonderful. So is Ubisoft Montreal, have they made anything I don't know about is the question. If they have, assuming that what I've played of them is what they've made, I would say they're an answer to this question as well.
Yeah, we might need some research help there because both Tim Rogers and I are currently in a position where we can't easily.
Did they do King Kong, the official game of the movie? Because
I like that game.
That game's amazing.
I think you mean Peter Jackson's King Kong, the official game of the movie.
Oh my God. How could I? Montreal did Child of Light, Watch Dogs. So the probability is going down as I read more of this. For Honor.
I hate to say this out loud too, but Watch Dogs, that's over a 9 on the IGN scale for me. And For Honor is also hovers around a 9 for me. If I had to IGN it, if I had to write the IGN review, For Honor is also real good. So I'm an idiot, though, so I've got problems over here that no Assassin's Creed games can cure.
Ubisoft Montreal did the Xbox 360 version of Michael Jackson: The Experience. Does that disqualify them?
I don't know. Is it a
I believe that's more developer support.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Like, I'm not going to call that creative output, but
That's
like the equivalent of work for hire between projects kind of thing.
They did do Tonic Trouble, though.
Oh, they did Batman Vengeance. That's a bad game.
Is it, or is it just bad for somebody who's read every Batman comic?
That might be true.
It's all right. I've put some serious time into it. I'm not going to call it.
Have you read every Batman comic?
Everyone.
I've read a lot of Batman comics. I would not have been able to say that like 6 months ago, but I have by now.
That's my current bedtime activity.
Why haven't we talked about Batman comics, Tim?
I can do it later. You know too much about them, so I'm trying to get as far as I can. I'll tell you that DC Universe app. That resolution on a goddarn iPad Pro, 120 FPS, zooming around the comic book, zoom in. You can zoom in like 4 times and it's just not see any pixels. It's kind of remarkable.
I canceled Marvel.
Oh, you canceled the Marvel app sucks.
Yeah. Rise of Sin Tzu. They did Rise of Sin Tzu. That's a bad game.
Oh, that's a really bad game.
I've been sitting here trying to think of a bad game id Software has made.
Oh, yeah. id Software has games that aren't as good as the other ones. But that's about it. The answer to this question is definitely Remedy. But
I like that Remedy answer.
I just like exploring the idea of like what's the like massively high output studio that's never had a bad game.
I think we should return to this question.
Yeah, sure, later. But I just want
Valve also.
Valve. Yeah, Valve is not. They're not massively high output enough, right? But everything they've made is tasty. But I also love that we never for a second entertained the answer Nintendo.
Absolutely
no, of course not.
So congratulations for that, because they've had some bad ones.
Terrible.
They've had some very, very polished turds.
Okay. My next question. What is the "but Doctor, I am Pagliacci" of video games?
Oh my God. It's when my doctor asks me what I do for a living and I say I make YouTube videos and then he says, "Oh, what are they about?" And I go, or he says, "Oh, sounds fun. What are they about?" And I go, "They're about video games." "Oh, that sounds really fun." And I'm like, "You're 6 years younger than me." And then I don't know where to go from there. So, like, this doctor's younger than me. Frank, have you gotten yet to the age where you've seen a doctor who's younger than you?
I believe my primary is, but I don't know that I count her. She's more of a funnel toward getting appointments with the doctors I actually need, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I don't really count her.
My primary care doctor's, he's way younger than me. He's like 10 years younger than me.
Like a Doogie Houserian situation.
I don't know if 35 counts as a Doogie Howser.
My doctor, who is not my primary, but is actually my primary, if you know what I mean. That guy is exactly my age.
Yeah, that rules, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, but my cardiologist has played every Kingdom Hearts game.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice.
Even 3.
Oh, wow.
In other words, he's current on them.
That's incredible.
Devoted to the craft.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's devoted to hearts.
Yeah, I know. That was the joke I made. He was like, "Yeah, I played Kingdom Hearts 2 when I was in cardiology school." I was like, "Dude."
There you go.
So mine is what we call a lapsed gamer, I suppose. But almost every appointment, like he goes back to when I was still digital clips and stuff like that, still producing, classic game stuff. And what he said in response to that years ago was, "You know what you ought to do? Karnov." And he brings up Karnov about every other appointment. When's Karnov going to come back? They should bring back Karnov.
I had to see like 12 different dentists to get what was done to my mouth done, right? Which was, basically I spent like a Mercedes-Benz worth of money over the course of 5 years so that my teeth are normal. And I had one of the dentists I dealt with was mega tattooed, and also if the variation in his Rolexes from appointment to appointment serves as any indication, quite rich. Anyway, he talked about StarCraft and Diablo 2 all the time. And it's a problem because he knew what I did for a living, and then his hands were in my mouth. And then I couldn't participate. And he'd just be like, "Yeah, I remember back in college, we were playing StarCraft, and there was this, for a while, people were doing this a lot, that tactic, And he's just going through all this, and I'm like, man, everybody I know who's like, every time I meet like a rich dude who's like a multi-Rolex owner, he's like a StarCraft fan. Does that make sense? I don't know what that
does make sense.
He's like, "Have you ever played, you like games? You played StarCraft?" "I tried playing StarCraft 2. I fell off of it," is what they usually say. As though, it's like I had a guy, this guy was like, "Oh, StarCraft 2 came out a while ago, right? Yeah, I just kind of fell off of that." I'm like, "A while
Maybe
ago?"
that's who Grimes' Player of Games was about.
What does that mean? That StarCraft 2 came out a while ago. He says it like it came out like this year. I'm now wondering what that means when that guy said that. How long ago does he think how long ago has he been in the dentist dungeon, ripping and yanking teeth and strapping on Rolexes?
Jaffe was referring to the previous episode of Insert Credit where we discussed the character in that Grimes song and whether it might be the same guy from Lana Del Rey's video games, another pop single.
I think it's that dentist.
It might be that dentist.
That's what I'm saying.
I will not reveal the contents of this, but I was sent a message by an Insert Credit listener that added some behind the scenes color to one of those songs, and I want to thank them on air because that was a delightful message to get.
Exciting.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Usually it's not a good sign when you receive a message from a listener of this podcast because they usually want their money back.
Yeah.
So if a cardiologist would have to play every Kingdom Hearts game to really be in tune with their organ of choice, what other video games should be played by specialists in other fields of medicine?
I mean, did your dentist know about tooth protectors on the Atari?
Yeah.
Tooth protectors.
Sure.
Is that an RTS? Because I think that's all he's into. I haven't had to see this particular dentist in almost a year, by the way. His part in the multi-stage transaction of my teeth is long complete. So I would ask him about teeth protectors if I had any reason to see him again.
So aforementioned primary care doctor who I use only as a funnel for other doctors once referred me to a spine surgeon for what ended up being just a little hip muscle thing. So her and her spine surgeon friend probably into Mortal Kombat, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or X-ray technicians would also be into Mortal Kombat.
Yeah. Well, the newer ones, certainly.
Oh, what about that Fight Club fighting game where you broke bones and it would like show an X-ray when you broke people's bones? They probably
that owns. That owns. I think any ophthalmologist should play at least one FPS competitively in their spare time.
Yeah,
because those are basically ophthalmology. In order to empathize with people who find their performance slipping in everyday tasks or whatnot, I think it's a good test of your eyesight to play an FPS.
I think a podiatrist would get a lot out of Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That toenail clip.
I hate that so much. Every time you use it.
Never encountered that in the game.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Where is that in the game?
I just in all of your videos.
Yeah, I just it's my go-to for when I'm talking about Death Strando.
Thanks for that.
That's my go-to. I like cutting it off at different points.
Yeah. So does he.
Of course, if you're a hepatologist, you should play Liver Live.
Yeah.
That makes
There's
sense.
my joke.
And people who specialize in hospice care should play all the Final Fantasies. Is that
nice? Yes.
No, that's the Make-A-Wish people who aren't doctors.
Yeah. I mean, that's they're not. I went with hospice care rather than the low hanging. I don't see the low hanging fruit these days. I got my blinders on for down here. So it's what was I going to say? It was going to be something. It was going to be something much funnier than my Final Fantasy joke, but we'll never know.
Yeah, I guess if you're a pulmonologist, you'd play Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, obviously. And then, a dry eye specialist, you would play Tears of the Kingdom.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's that is a distinct type of ophthalmologist. It is a subspecialty.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
all right. Let's go into our lightning round.
Oh, this why not?
This week, we're playing a game that I would like to call first-person pronouns.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a Japanese first-person pronoun.
All right.
Forgive in advance my mispronunciations. And
I can help you with the pronunciations. A, I, U, E, O. That's it. That's the vowels never change. A, I, U, E, O. Same accentuation, same enunciation, same emphasis. A, I, U, E, O.
My main concern is where to put the emphasis on each word, as opposed to the...
Every letter of Japanese is a syllable, right?
So it could be anywhere.
So wherever you see a vowel, that's the end of a syllable. Neat, huh?
Yeah. I'm going to give you a Japanese first-person pronoun, and you have to give an example of a video game character who would use that pronoun in the Japanese adaptation, or perhaps even in the Japanese original.
Is it okay if I get every one of these right? Or
yes.
Okay.
It's okay if you win this episode. Your first pronoun is watakushi.
Watakushi.
Yeah.
Which I can explain this for everyone. That is the normal formal first person pronoun with no gender specification, more commonly used by women or older men. Is that one? It's the generic formal first person pronoun. I would say generic formal, I think, is a specific way to. So think of a generic formal video game character.
Who would that be?
I don't know, letting everybody know.
Tortimer from Animal Crossing?
Yeah.
Is he a generic formal? Yeah, why not?
Atakushi.
Atakushi is a more of a colloquial formal, specifically for girl type persons. So it's a colloquial formal feminine first person pronoun. A colloquial formal feminine. That would just be I don't know. I feel like there's got to be at least one character in every. My specific answer to this is one character in every Tales of game.
Yeah.
I like that.
That's my specific answer for that. It's probably right. So I don't know.
Watashi.
Watashi is standard formal, standard generic, kind of equilibrious pronoun, where it's the textbook first person pronoun, which has specifically the widest usage.
Is that our boy Mario then?
Yeah, Mario would be a watashi.
Are you saving
I don't
that
think
for something
so.
else?
No, I've never considered what Mario's first person Japanese pronoun would be because he never speaks in any of the games. But I believe that in the manga, there's a manga that I've never read where he definitely does speak. And he also speaks in the cartoon, or in the movie. So I'm wondering what his pronoun is. I think his pronoun is probably I'll say it when we get to it. But watashi would be just like just imagine like a middle-aged man who's gotten over having to pose as a macho tough guy. So like
Your
lot
Alan
of the
Wake type.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So like a lot of your like the older guys, the Oyabun guys in the Yakuza games would be watashis and are watashis, right? Whereas they've kind of steeped in the tough guy culture for so long, they're over it. Atashi is your standard colloquial feminine, and it has incredibly wide usage in, your manga and anime and video games for when there's just the kind of girl character that the quote-unquote mythical typical guy finds quote-unquote cute, right? So just the most common, like, cute girl character.
Like an Aerith.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, like what's her name? Aika in Skies of Arcadia would be an Atashi, whereas Fina in Skies of Arcadia would be a Watashi, right?
Your childhood best friend.
Yeah.
Saria in Ocarina of
Osana
Time.
Najimi. Well, Tifa is a Watashi. So
Yeah, Tifa's the Watashi.
she's like your classic Osana Najimi trope, but she's also got a Watashi streak to her. Aerith is also Watashi, so
Oh, really? Huh.
yeah.
Which of these is Shiori Fujisaki?
She's Watashi. She's just
that makes sense.
plain old. She's not just Watashi. She's Watashi in kanji. So, but also, I mean, Watashi as a kanji is very normal. It's not like it's weird it's weirder to spell it. There are many ways you can write it in hiragana, you can write it in katakana if you want to be, if you want to have a little flavor to it when you're writing a friendly letter or whatever. There's different ways to write it out, but it's most
Washi.
commonly a kanji. Washi is just like an old man or an old woman, an old person, an old human.
Anyone still alive in Dark Souls?
A person who just don't care, and is neither wealthy nor destitute, or could be destitute, certainly not wealthy, maybe wealthy. In other words, it's a wide breadth. It's a mysterious pronoun.
Is it the old guys in caves in the first Zelda?
Yeah, most likely those dudes are washi.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
They might even be zashi, but they don't talk in first person. Woshi.
Boku,
Boku from Boku Kubota
yeah.
from Boku no Natsuyasumi.
of course.
His name is literally Kubota Boku is his name. His name is literally Boku, which is very funny. It's revealed at the very end of the game. It's very funny. So maybe that's not his pronoun because, he whenever he talks, he says Boku wa, and it's common in Japanese among young children to just say your name.
So he was speaking in
He's
third
secretly an
person the whole
Ore-sama.
time.
It's not exactly true, but it's common in comic books and cartoons for a character to say their name. No, it's common for girls to do that. It's less common for dudes to do that. I used to have a friend named Sachiko who would constantly be like, Sachiko, isotope. Sachiko is going to get some ice cream, right? And it was like, you always saying your name in third person, but it was normal. It wasn't weird.
George is getting upset.
Yeah. As a fan of Seinfeld, it struck me as a very George is getting very upset thing to do. But it was normal.
Ore.
But Boku. Oh wait, let me go back to
Okay.
Boku. Nah, who cares? The guy who's like the creepy internet shut-in otaku guy in the Judgment games. I know his name off the top of my head. I'm not gonna say it out loud. The guy who's the creepy otaku who becomes a private detective in Lost Judgment. Have anybody played this game? He's a
I
Boku.
really need to.
So he's like an adult Boku. He's like what Japanese people of a certain age think of when they think of an adult Boku. It's just a guy with like greasy hair, those self-loathing
man
glasses.
child.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
your typical Hirose Entertainment Yard patronizer circa 2004 is like what they think of. A wotaku,
Travis Touchdown.
which stands for Kimochi Warui Otaku. By the way, in case you didn't know what a wotaku was, Kimochi Warui meaning creepy. Travis Touchdown ain't no otaku. Goichi Suda had no idea what an otaku was. Like, no offense to him. That guy was... So here's something about Goichi Suda. I'm talking trash about Suda now. Who cares? That goddarn guy was always cool. He was never uncool in his entire life. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype. That guy was cool. I'm not calling him a jock, but I'm telling you, that guy's been cool since he was like 12, I think. Like there's no way he's not always been a cool guy. So he doesn't know what no otaku is. God darn it. Oh, he's a Boku, by the way. Interesting.
He's Boku.
Yeah. He switches between Boku and Ore.
Yeah. Well, who's Ore?
Who's Ore? Ore is every Yakuza.
Yeah.
Kiryu is
that's
so
true.
Kiryu is what every 12-year-old. There's a segment in the Boku no Natsuyasumi video that I did very recently. There's a segment in that where I talk about there's just this ethereal tunnel that a young man traverses in his life in Japan, and I've heard people describe this. You go to enough bars with enough hardcore bands after during enough overnight waiting for the trains to resume service, and you hear people talk about a wide range of topics, and one of those is often, when did you start calling yourself Ore, dude? Oh, I was like 6. I was so stupid, right? I was the stupidest kid in school. I started calling myself Ore when I was 6, man. Yeah. Right? And it's like, and I'm like, wow, this is a conversation that would not exist. I'm so lucky to be able to hear this. You wouldn't hear this kind of conversation in most
other languages,
countries that I can think of off the top of my head as a person who's studied languages. So this is a really fun conversation to overhear. So there's like this tunnel of time you pass through where you start calling yourself Ore in front of your friends, but you're still Boku at home, right? So it's like there's this neat thing. But like Kazuma Kiryu, he's the guy every Japanese 8-year-old thinks they are when they start calling themselves Ore wa on the playground, on the baseball field or whatever.
Oh, that's good.
Is what I'm convinced of. So like he's like, if ever a man deserved to have Ore like embroidered on a knit cap, that's a reference to Cypher from Kingdom Hearts 2. It would be Kazuma Kiryu. So also Cypher from Kingdom Hearts 2 is the classic. He's Ore as a kanji, whereas I believe Kazuma Kiryu is Ore as a.
What a pull.
He's more of he's Ore as a kanji as well, but Takayuki Yagami from Judgment, he's Ore as katakana. So these are facts. So it's that's how those guys go.
We got 2 more. Jibun.
Oh, you got 2 more, Lord. Jibun. Jibun just means myself, and it's more of like it's like business meeting etiquette. When you're in the middle of a meeting and you need to speak in the first person, you would use something like that. Oh, Jibun wa sou omoimasen. Something like that. Like, I don't think that's a good idea, Mr. President. You would say that. I don't know that. I feel like your more abstract video game characters just say Pac-Man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Ones who don't have any idea of self.
Because Jibun contains the kanji for bun, which means division, fun, which means minutes, division, fraction, and Pac-Man, has that famous pizza slice.
Yeah.
As his one frame of animation. So I think the boon makes sense for him.
Is it like in English when people use one as a first person pronoun?
Similar, yeah. Very, very similar. Very similar.
Our last is Oira.
Oira. Oh, Sans from Undertale.
Thank you. That's what I was going for.
Yeah, because there was there were like people were simultaneously going, what? And yeah. In Japan, when it was revealed that Sans from the video game Undertale, which they loved despite having not been able to play it because it wasn't in Japanese, they got a taste of the medicine that Japan was giving us in the 1990s, which was a sweet payback. Right? Like when it was revealed that Sans was Oira, because there was like a heated discussion as to what his pronoun would be if he was Boku, right? Oira is like a child pronoun. So it's childish. So Sans using Oira was a huge OMG moment from the J internet. A triumphant OMG moment.
Okay. I think we can give Tim the win on that one. We can put that in your bank of episodes you will eventually host on this show.
Oh, yeah, we'll go ahead and bank that one.
Does anyone have any recommendations they'd like to share with our audience this week?
I do. I've been playing games sort of in the run up to the end of the year, but specifically the October deluge of we've kind of meted out how our weeks are going to go, my wife and I, with the games that are coming out. But sort of in the run up to that, I've been playing Void Stranger. I think it's like $11. It's too little. It's a little indie game by a 2-person team called System Erasure. I think they're from Finland. I hope I'm getting that right. They made a game in 2017 called Zero Ranger, which on the face of it is a vertical shooter. Void Stranger is it's the basic pitch is it's a Sokoban. But if you're familiar with the sort of species of indie game, like let's say Fez, Tunic, this kind of game where it's like, so the initial pitch is you're playing The Legend of Zelda, you're playing a platformer, and then sort of at some point you sort of understand that there's a different method of interaction with the game, and that's kind of becomes not to spoil those games, I'm not going to go too in depth, but like that's, that kind of game where it's like, oh, we've built in a sort of secondary and tertiary layer of like understanding the world. Void Stranger is that exponentially. It holds multitudes and wonders. It is the best game I will play this year, and I fully believe Nintendo is going to put out the best game they've ever made next month. And Void Stranger is the best game I will play this year. It is incredible. I cannot recommend a new video game as much as I'm recommending Void Stranger. Go play it.
Voice, or as it's called in Japan, voice today. That's not true. I don't know what's.
I mean, probably is.
It probably, yeah. Voice today.
Voice today.
Do you play voice? Do you play voice today? Like what? Can you just say the full word?
Frank, you got anything this week?
No, I'm going to skip this week.
Tim?
Shoot.
Do you want to skip this week as well?
Yeah, I mean, I ain't got nothing. No.
That's fine. I've got recommendations for the lot of us.
No, wait. I would recommend invite a friend to see a movie. And just don't tell them what the movie is.
Don't tell them what movie it is.
And then tell your friends to do the same to you at some point.
I just might.
But make sure it's good. Make sure the movies are interesting. Don't punk your friend into going to see Expendables 4 or whatever, right?
Oh, well, now you've given away it's not Expendables 4. Okay.
Expendables.
Or is it?
Expandables. If you've enjoyed this or any episode of Insert Credit, please rate and review our show wherever and however you can. You could also support us on patreon.com/insertcredit, where you could become a patron to submit your own questions, listen to monthly bonus episodes, and more. If you'd like to sponsor our show, you could do that. Get in touch with show@insertcredit.com, where you can talk to me. Don't bother the panel, just bother me. You can also join our community at forums.insertcredit.com. Find videos of these episodes on youtube.com/insertcreditshow. I would like to urge you to buy Hyper Gunsport and Wishlist Demon School on Steam. Please listen to the Video Game History Hour if you'd like to hear more from Frank Cifaldi and more about video games in a cogent discussion. This episode is edited by Esper Quinn, with original music by Kurt Feldman. I'm Alex Jaffe.
I'm Frank Cifaldi.
I'm Tim Rogers.
I'm Christa Lee.
And hey now, we're an all-star. Frank, I value and treasure our friendship.
Oh, yeah, me too.
You're a good man, and I'm happy to have you in my life.
Thank you.